last one I got right now. Some duplicated ones that are basically you don't need to ask them over and over again. But I'll just read it. It says, and this is for everybody, and will you bring the deed restriction enforcement to a vote again, like we did a couple years ago, and will the wishes of the residents be respected? And we'll start with place number 3. Start with you, Elizabeth.
I don't know that there was a vote. Was it?
It was a survey.
Oh, the survey.
We did the survey.
Well, it's not even really a survey, it's under the law. MUDs have the authority to enforce deed restrictions, and that's going to carry over to the limited district. So I agree with what Pam said earlier, open to suggestions of whether that should be something that the limited district would continue. I would want to confer with residents, take their input, and see if we want to continue that. Because, again, the big consideration is the lack of teeth that these restrictions have. Yeah, you get a letter, but if you don't do anything about it, then what? We take you to court. Are we going to take you to court? That's the question, because that's expensive. So we have to, that's something that we need to look into and work through.
Brett.
Well, in terms of the contract that we currently have with Treasure of the Hills was for a year. It's under evaluation. It's been evaluated. There will be some decision, recommendation about how we deal, whether we continue that contract or some other way of trying to survey the area and in terms of deed restriction violations. So I don't know whether it's a vote. It's going to end up, the MUD board is going to have to make a choice about whether to continue a contract or how it's going to handle the deed restriction enforcement. But the city of Austin annexation will take care of a lot. Will take care of a lot of things simply because of the code that the city of Austin has.
The situation here, I think, is yes, there's going to be deed restrictions, and there are some of them that are pretty well defined as what the deed restrictions are. Those are not so interpretive, and I mean, you can't have junk cars, unlicensed vehicles, things along those lines. The problem comes in when you've got interpretive deed restrictions and how they're handled. Many people have been getting deed restrictions sent to them that are apparently to themselves kind of frivolous. So it's a process of how we end up doing that. And I think that's where the correction needs to take place. You know, people don't, if we're going to send out deed restrictions, perhaps there should be some review of those things before they actually end up going to a homeowner so that he doesn't get a notice for something that's ridiculous to begin with, okay? So that's where I'm coming from and how we handle them. Now, what ends up happening with Austin, I'm not sure. It has to be looked into to a further extent because, you know, you can't have somebody like a Westlake annex Anderson Mill and impose their deed restrictions on us. All right? Now, because I'm sure their deed restrictions are a lot more, as you can imagine, would be a lot more stringent. Now, whether Austin can do that and they have the legality to do that, I'm not sure. But that needs to be looked into, and I would be willing to look into that to find out just how much Austin has an authority over us in those kind of regards. And by the way, Austin is going to handle it is that they will enforce deed restrictions if somebody complains to them to enforce it. And if you have somebody complaining constantly about deed restrictions, I don't think that they're going to be very happy about how they're going to enforce them.
I'm completely in favor of taking residents' input on deed restrictions or any other issue. And so yes, I think another survey would be a great idea. There could be options in the course of annexation that haven't been talked about yet. I don't know, I'm hearing people say there will be deed restrictions. I don't know that that has to be the case. I would think that the city could amend the strategic partnership agreement if the residents wanted to eliminate that role from a limited district. I would assume that that could be done through an amendment of the SBA. just an option. I'm just talking options. I'm highly in favor of taking the input from residents. It's your neighborhood, it's your future, it's your neighborhood's future.
I'd like to see us start some exploratory committees in that it would be made up of citizens' input on what to do after the fact once we become a limited district. Those citizens could be funded enough to say, okay, let's take that survey again. Let's see where we're all at. Okay, so if people have moved out, let's see what do we want to do. The city ordinances will take care of a great deal of the problems on deed restrictions. We are hoping that they will respond very nicely because we know the city is very willing to respond to all of its citizens. They have plenty of citizens to deal with. So I'm hoping that we'll all cooperate with those ordinances. But I'm very willing to look at different exploratory committees that are made up for the citizens that they want to decide, okay, should we take another survey, send out a postcard, which will cost such and such, and let's find out what the citizens want. We're going to take input from citizens, citizen committee managing the survey, etc. I'm open for that. I'm open for recommendations then. Where do we go from here? I think that's a very good possibility. And we have so many options that we can do as a limited district and as a mud board director to say, you have always had the right to input and you've always had the right to listen. I'm listening.